My topic for today is virtualization. So let's start na. Ito yung outline ng topics natin. So let's start with the definition of virtualization. It's the process of running a virtual instance of a computer system in a layer abstracted from the actual hardware. So in layman's term, parang making a software instance of a system run on top of a current system. So imagine na lang, Windows 7 running within your Mac OS, a PlayStation 2 on your Windows 10, or an Android on your Ubuntu. So magkaiba ang OS ng say Windows 10 sa Windows 7 pero nagra-run sila on this at the same time. So ganun ang purpose of virtualization. So before we start lang, some terminologies. OS means operating system. VM means virtual machine. What's a virtual machine? It's a software copy or emulation of a computer system. So it runs like a computer without the physical, in-your-face na computer. Computer pero walang computer na nakikita or nahawakan, tangible. So what's a guest? It's another name for virtual machine. Host is the physical computer. VMM is Virtual Machine Manager. It's a software on the host that is used to create, run, import, export, and delete a virtual machine. An image is an installer or a snapshot of a system that you want to virtualize. And a hypervisor is a layer in the host's hardware that enables virtualization and handles resource sharing. So, background muna, history and purpose. The concept probably originated from the 1960s to the 1970s. Before kasi IBM's development of, there was a development of IBM for robust time-sharing systems. Time-sharing doesn't mean na yung oras talagang pinag-share. It means computer resources. So, dati kasi parang kung scientist ka, ikaw isang tao lang ang makakagawa, isang scientist per computer muna. So parang every CPU clock ticks are important. So in this, dinevelop nila na mag-share na ng resources ang computer para multiple tasks, mas mataas na throughput. So the concept of sharing large computer resources to multiple users to increase efficiency. The start of Moore's law, computers were too expensive back then. Thus the scientist has to wait the other one to finish just to make computations. The waiting or turnaround time needs to be reduced to perform more tasks in a span of time. So how does virtualization works? Hindi nyo na kailangan kabisado ito kasi hindi naman, di napapakita ng computer sa inyo. Pero just to have an idea. So first, hypervisor prepares the host hardware resources. Next, it reads the needs of the client. Third, it copies the host hardware details. Fourth, it allocates the resources. And fifth, it gives the resources to the client. Tapos, pag naman enough naman na yung resource, so the hypervisor saves a snapshot of the client. Client meaning the VM. And then next, the client reads the client's resources needs. Tapos, lastly, it takes the resources back to the host. So, hindi siya nag-stay forever na kung hindi mo naman ginagamit, ibabalik naman niya sa host. Hindi siya nag-stay the same as it. Tapos, ito yung mga nitty-gritty parts. Architecture comparison, traditional versus virtualized. Traditional is host run only one OS at a time. Kamukha ng ginagamit nyo ngayon, kung nakaharap kayo sa computer, yan ang traditional. One OS lang ang gumagana at least ngayon, currently. So it is treated as one PC. Whereas in a virtualized environment, host can run multiple clients at the same time. And also, depending on the setup, your network treats it as a multiple PC. Okay, next one is all the host resources are allocated into one OS only. So this includes the RAM, the hard disk, the processors, the threads of those processors, and the interfaces. Whereas in a virtualized environment, the user can choose how much of a resource can be given to which client. So kayo nag-allocate, unlike in a traditional, ang computer ang bahala sa inyo. Lastly, software-wise, the OS only supports current application it can run on its libraries. Pero sa virtualized environment, it can virtually run any apps. Ano bang maganda example nito? Kamukha ng isang game na Red Alert 2, hindi na gumagana sa Windows 10. Pero kung mag-virtual environment ka, pwede mo siyang install in a Windows 7 tapos install mo doon. Or Windows XP kung gusto mo pa mas backtrack pa para mapagana yung mga ganong apps.
Jom, kung may clarification lang siguro, how would you differentiate virtualization with emulation kung since games and emulators ang pwedeng isipin eh?
Actually, wait lang. They're the same on at some point, pero ang emulation kasi ay parang specific lang ang ginagawa niya, unlike sa virtualization na depende sa resource, depende sa para magiging backbone ng virtual environment na yon. You can do other things. For emulation kasi, it's made to run on a specific action.
Okay. Copy. Thank you.
So, like yung doon sa Android nga, emulation yung part na yun. Although nagbe-virtualize ka na parang instance ng isang Android device. Pero isang purpose lang siya. Okay. Next is ito, example niya. So, kung nakikita niyo doon sa traditional, isa-isa lang kasi isa lang computer mo, isang OS lang. Tapos yung application mo, depende pa sa kung anong kaya niyang gawin. Wait lang. Follow up on virtualization. Both ba nasa OS level? Hindi. Hindi rin. Ang virtualization ay after ng layer ng OS. Heto. Let me annotate that. Virtualization, gagamitin niya kasi yung hypervisor nito, which is your computer. Tapos ilalagay sa OS. And then, may i-install ka pang app for virtual machine management. So dito mo ilalagay yung VM mo. Whereas sa emulation kasi, may app, dun sa app lang siya nakabase. Dun mo lang mairaran yun sa emulators mo. Which is kailangan mo pa install. Minsan ini-skip na nila yung for an emulation part, minsan tinatanggal na nila tong part na to. Kasi app lang ang basehan niya, kukuha lang siya ng resources dito. Okay?
Yeah, actually I have a question na parang ngayon ko lang nga rin naisip yun. Anong difference ng dalawa? So actually I'm now on Google searching for the definition, and here in hightechnectar.com, in emulation, you use the full hardware and software that you want to imitate on top of the host system. Tapos in virtualization, you mimic the only parts of the hardware according to your requirements with the help of guest OS to run correctly to have the same architecture. So parang
ni-skip
yung sa So, sige, go.
Okay. Yun nga, sir. Yung sa emulation, tinatanggal na itong layer na ito. Diretso na siya dito sa machine. Unlike pag virtual kasi, kukuha pa siya ng mga resources here.
Yeah, although actually nga parang basta it's an interesting thought of the difference. Kasi parang if you think of it, it's easy to assume parang interchangeable. Pero syempre, when in terms of gaming, kasi si Fong gamer rin yan may ako rin, na, parang when you think of emulation, you think of it in terms of playing games or parang having systems run as an entire system. And then, but when you're thinking of virtualization, you're thinking of operating systems na hindi games. But I guess I've never heard of somebody say, I'm going to virtualize PS2 or an Xbox. Diba? Parang wala akong narinig na ganun. Puro emulate. So, I don't know.
Also,
anyway, that's...
Kung titingnan mo, i-add ko lang rin, sir, kung titingnan nyo, in a virtual environment, you can emulate. Pero in an emulator, you can't virtualize.
So, diba? Parang if you have an emulator that runs only on Windows XP, meron ka Windows 7, so you have now Windows 7 running Windows XP in order to run an emulator.
Parang ganun. Pwede siyang
Diba?
pagpatong-patong yung virtualization. Para sa
Yeah.
emulation, limited lang yung resource.
Or yun nga. Well, sige, okay. Continue na lang.
Okay. So, let me proceed na sa next. Ay. Paano ko tatanggalin yung annotations? Okay, yan. Okay, so properties of virtual machine. It's one, it's tightly isolated. So you can access another VM's resource unless explicitly specified to do so. Second, it's independent from the other VMs. And third, it assures security on hardware level. Kasi naalala niyo sinabi ko kanina, although nag-allocate ka ng resource ng computer, ng host pala I mean, that host runs on one piece of hardware lang. Say, kung wari RAM. Yung mga stored na memory doon sa RAM, hindi ma-access ng VM na yun. For security purposes. Okay, so and then number two, it's portable. An instance of a VM can be transferred to another host. Third, it's hardware independent. So whatever your host specification is, it will run the VM. It's compatible with the 32-bit and the 64-bit as long as it can run a virtual machine manager. Pero alam ko for Windows 10 yata, parang kailangan yata naka-Pro yung license nyo kasi yung hypervisor ay limited to Pro lang. I'm not sure. And then lastly, it can be used for high availability setup. Take note of this kasi i-discuss ko to kung bakit useful to for medical for the medical field. So there are these are the types of virtual machines: network virtualization, storage, desktop, data, application, and server. So isa-isahin natin. Network virtualization, abstracting network resources that were traditionally delivered into hardware, in hardware to software. It combines multiple physical networks to one virtual software-based network, or it can divide one physical network into separate independent virtual networks. It removes the tedious physical management of networks and lessens physical footprints. Kung familiar kayo sa networking, merong virtual LAN and the virtual DNS servers. Virtual LAN is, hindi ko na masyado i-discuss na, ayoko ng networking ng college, sorry. Okay, next up is storage virtualization. It's pulling of physical storage from multiple storage devices into what appears to be a single storage device, or pool of available storage capacity that is managed from a central console. So para siyang aggregator of storage lang. It also acts as redundancy or backup of storage. Example of these are RAID or NAS. NAS ay Network Assisted Storage. RAID is for redundancy. Usually built in na to sa mga computers na if something fails, at least may mababalikan kayo. Dahil sa computer na lang kayo may babalikan. Sa totoong buhay, wala na. Charot! Okay. Desktop virtualization. Desktop OS is installed in a data server. The said client is now accessible over the network. It works like a computer without a physical computer. Usually, sa mga business, sa IoT, ito yung infrastructure as a service. You can also locally run a different desktop on your own desktop. Ito yung parang laging tinitingnan pag sinasabing word na virtualization, it's desktop virtualization. So examples of these are remote hosted desktop or local virtual OS. Na-try nyo na bang sa Microsoft kasi pag may pa-training sila na kailangan ng system, ito yung ginagamit nila. Magko-connect ka lang sa browser mo tapos meron ka ng virtual OS na doon ka pwede maglaro ng mga code or something. Itong ginagamit.
Meron ba silang virtual PC?
Sa Microsoft, sir? Meron. Sa mga trainings nila, meron silang ibibigay sa iyo na virtual PC.
Yeah, kasi when I had a training on Microsoft Vista, so basically that's long time ago. Parang they had me run, I think, virtual PC, 2 instances in the same computer and the goal was to get one computer to talk, one virtual vista, I guess, to talk to the other one. So parang networking with you're networking two computers.
Yes,
kunwari,
in your
within
computer.
another computer. Yun. So that's what I remember. Kaya doon ako na-introduce doon. Pero normally I never use virtual PC. Pero doon lang ako natututo doon.
Okay.
When I experience.
Okay, sir.
Sige.
So next is data virtualization. It combines all data sources, allows retrieval and manipulation of data without the need to know the exact technicalities of each source. It's useful for business intelligence and data warehousing. Hindi ako masyado familiar dito. Ngayon ko lang nakakita na may ganitong type ng virtualization. So examples of this is Denodo and Google Analytics. Next is application virtualization. Ito ay medyo close sa emulation. It's making a sandbox environment for an application. It does not care what OS the host run. It can let the users run an application without maintaining any infrastructure nor hardware. Basically, any system we use online. It's platform as a service. So example of this is JVM, Java Virtual Machine. Itong Wine ay kung gumagamit kayo ng Linux, it's Windows-enabled environment for Linux. Ano yung Citrix? Sorry.
Did somebody say Citrix?
Sa chat, sir. Later na lang
okay.
Search ko na muna kung ano yung Citrix. Okay. So Wine is Windows-enabled environment in a Linux setting. G Suite, and also Android emulator. Basically, anything na dinedeploy sa online, yun ay application virtualization. Server virtualization, this will be perfectly useful. Similar to application virtualization, except servers are contained inside the VM and shares resources with the host. Servers can be web server, database server, file server, any server what you can think of. So bakit ko dinidiscuss ito? Why am I discussing this? No, I'm not actually wasting your time. So first off, for medicine kasi, for healthcare actually, it can prevent more data loss by making redundancies. As discussed kanina, kasi kung makita nyo yung trend ng although pababa sila, pero it exists. And next up is health data first. Network traffics aren't the same in shapes and sizes. So social media, video streaming, music streaming, P2P downloads, health applications all travel within the same network. So some data needs to be passed immediately, some can wait. A cloud network can delay the delivery of care one way or another. So kunwari may sa office nyo may kailangan kayong i-submit kaagad sa kasama nyo. But yun nga, dahil sa network kasi, minsan may priorities kasi yan. Or kung sino yung pinakamalaki, yun muna yung unahin niya. So it might affect na ang pagsasend nyo ng data, which is yung delay kasi. So recommendation is set a virtualized network that can manage the bandwidth and filter the types of traffic. I won't say how, but it's a recommendation na something you can think of para sa office nyo. For big data, health data are stored on-premise. So parang lives and dies on-premise. Para ito yung topic sa HI 201 ng mga data silos. So using virtualization, you can actually help others for research purposes or for gathering information and data. So researchers and other health professionals may need this data for their studies. Usually kasi pag data silo lang yan, little to no contribution to the medical and scientific society. So if my recommendation is, if possible, you can create a set up a virtual data virtualization environment for for your office para maka-share sa ibang mga nangangailangan ng data. Next is make systems work 99% of the time. Applications usually run on one machine only. If machine dies, everything stops. So in healthcare, crucial decisions need to be made, but the source data must be up to date. So and server expansion or location change also happens at work. So pag naglilipatan na kayo or parang system upgrade, may mga times na yung mga application nyo hindi na nila kayang gumana sa mga bagong system or along the way parang nasira na lang, hindi nyo na magagamit. So, ang purpose ng virtualization is to create a snapshot of the system, replicate it on different hosts, and configure it to run on high availability. I don't think na kailangan ko pang i-discuss yun kasi yeah, you get the point. Okay, so another one is some applications don't run anymore on newer operating systems. The application, another instance, if the application vendor isn't giving any more support nor any upgrade, and your host is nearing its final breath and all data are at risk of being lost. Okay, for recommendation, create a snapshot of the host system and start in a virtual machine. Create a virtual machine containing the last OS the application supports and install the said application. At least in here, hindi mo kailangan physically na maintain pa yung OS na yun. Sa VM mo na, sa disk image mo na lang siya ini-store. So if you need it, at least meron ka pang copy software-wise. And you also can transfer it anywhere. Okay, so wishing you can do more. Parang getting the best of both worlds. So like in an exe file is made for Windows. It can run on any OS except Windows. You don't need to buy a new computer just to try working in Ubuntu. And yes, I've said this in my post, that if you want to try hacking, but is afraid of doing it out there, you can actually use virtual machines. In ano ba yung training na attendan ko? Dito sa ethical hacking na training nun, ang hindi kayo isasabak sa real world. Kung gusto niyo siyang i-try, ang gagamitin niyo ay virtual machines lang. Kasi baka at risk kayo of makulong. So VM muna ang paggagamitan niyo. Recommendation, install Virtual Machine Manager, VirtualBox or VMware. Install the OS that you prefer. I've said it in my post, it's Kali Linux ang ginagamit for penetration testing. And this is the fun penetration unit. Tapos, saving Mother Earth tayo. Too many computers require too much electricity, so high carbon footprint. So physical computers will soon become trash. Thus, doing virtualization lessens the cost of buying so many hardware that end up being underutilized or unutilized. Lalo na sa gobyerno. Shoutout po sa mga kasama ko sa gobyerno na bili ng mga gamit at hindi naman ginagamit na maayos. So, ito ang answer dan, virtualization. Okay. So, gusto nyo bang mag-sample akong paano mag-install ng VM? Because it's the end of my slide.
Yes!
Sure.
Mag-demo ka.
Okay, sige. Wait.
Thank you.
Diyan na binili ko yung Mac ko, meron na siyang
ano yan?
VirtualBox. Yan.
Ay, good. Yes,
yung
pwede yan.
Air. Yun yung MacBook Air.
Yep. Kailangan mo na lang yan ay OS na i-installan mo. Okay, so nasaan ba? Ay, nakikita niyo ba yung mga games ko? Sorry. Hello po sa mga nabudol ng Steam sale.
Yan, yung place na yun.
Ay, nakita ko lang yun. Close ko lang ito.
Kala, punta ka na dyan.
Okay. So, gumamit ako ng VMware kasi mas sanay ako dito kaysa VirtualBox. And ginagamit ko kasi ito sa work. So, kailangan ko ay VMware ang gamit. So, in here, you can click File, create new virtual machine. Tapos may pop-up dito na typical or custom. Siyempre, bilang mga noobs lang tayo, typical lang tayo. Okay. Then here, pipili ka ng disk image. Nakikita na muna ba yung ginagawa ko sa screen?
Yes.
Okay. So, ayun. Pili lang kayo. Isa lang ang meron ako dito sa flash drive Lubuntu. Lubuntu is an Ubuntu derivative na mas light. So, click next pagka nakapili na ng ISO file. Then, click lang yung mga details. Yes, it's a Linux and it's an Ubuntu. Then, papangalanan ko ito. Okay. So, virtual machine name. Next. And ito, size ng gagamitin sa disk. So, should you use a single file or a multiple file? Sa VirtualBox, tatanungin rin ito. For single, ang difference lang ay mas madaling i-manage yung multiple files. Pero, tawag ito, pag kasi, yun nga, may performance degradation na for multiple. And also, pag nagta-transfer ka ng mga virtual machine, may hirap ang multiple. But I prefer I prefer using a single file lang. Then click next. Tapos, ito yung mga hardware na titingnan nyo. So, kung nakita nyo dito, for the RAM, pwede ko pa siyang palitan. 2 gig yung automatic, pero pwede ko pa siyang bawasan. Kasi 1 gig lang ang ibibigay ko. Tapos, even for the processors, ilan bang processors ko? Okay, so quad-core itong i5. Pero bibigyan ko lang ng 1 processor. Tapos, thread per processor pa, pwede ko pang piliin. 2 thread cores pala, sorry. Ayan. And then for network, hetong magiging fun part for network. Pag net, sa computer mo lang yung pwedeng ma-access. However, kung gusto mo ma-access yung virtual machine na yun with to your other networks, use the bridge network. Saan ang magiging use nito? Di ba nagsiset up tayo ng servers? So if you use the bridge network, using the IP of that virtual machine, pwede nyo i-access yung mga websites na web pages or web applications na ginawa nyo. I'll go with the NAT na lang. Total, wala naman akong ibang gagamitan. Ito lang. Then click finish. Then power on this virtual machine para mag-install yung OS. See? So nakapagbukas ako ng ibang OS sa OS kong Windows 10. Let's try using this Ubuntu. Sana kayanin naman today yung paglo-load ng Ubuntu. Pero yun ang tutorial ko actually is how to install. Ngayon, pag nakapag-install na kahit na-run nyo na yung OS na yun, it's up to you na kung anong gusto nyo gawin. Here. So I'm using now Ubuntu within my Windows 10 purpose of virtualization. You can do other things na in here. But basically it's there. You can use it whenever you like. We're using virtualization. And that ends my discussion for virtualization. Thank you.